frequency per se, as usual. I mean, there's lots on radio frequency, but I'm beginning now with a basic presentation, which is basic procedures for obstructive sleep apnea. Am I heard audible? Yes? Okay. So let's
Yes, you
begin
are.
today with
Yes, you are.
radio frequency ablation for obstructive sleep apnea. This is one of my presentations, basic procedures which are done in the outpatients for obstructive sleep apnea. I'm not going to explain what is in depth. The presentation which is prior to this, if we kind of take a radio frequency masterclass kind of, wherein we explain everything of the radio frequency, including the physics of radio frequency, the biophysics of radio frequency, and the details, so forth. But I'm moving to the next, which is applicable to ENT for this point in time, which are the basic outpatient procedures for radio frequency. Okay. These can be done in the outpatients under local anesthesia. These can also be done in the major operation theaters under general anesthesia. So let's begin first to seeing the radio frequency ablation for obstructive sleep apnea. So first, radio frequency ablation. It involves delivery of electrosurgical energy resulting in submucosal thermal injury and resultant scar formation. Radio frequency energy has been applied to the nasal turbinates in ENT, the nasal turbinates, the soft palate, tongue base to improve sleep disordered breathing. Now, we also use it for the tonsils. We also use it for posterior pharyngeal wall pillars. And we also now use it sometimes in the nose for the septum as well. So now moving to what are the various appliances that are used. There are various appliances which can be used. We use the machine which is Sutter BM780 model. As you can see this, that's the machine. This mode is the monopolar cut mode, which is the cutting mode in which the machine operates. This is the coagulation mode in which the machine operates. This is the power output knob from 0 to 10. And this is the bipolar coagulation mode in which the machine operates. So that's monopolar cut, step 1, step 2. This is monopolar coagulation, step 1, step 2. And this is bipolar coagulation. So moving a little bit earlier on again, radio frequency in short involves delivery of radio frequency energy, that's electrosurgical energy, resulting in submucosal thermal injury and resulting in inflammation and then scar formation. So in short, any tissue you give radio frequency energy undergoes some form of inflammation and then heals by fibrosis or scar formation. So in short, it tauts, makes that particular tissue taut and shrinks and tauts in short. So it can be used on the nasal turbinate, soft palate and the tongue base to improve sleep disordered breathing, wherein these tissues and the other tissues of the upper aerodigestive tract itself are lax and hence they fall into the windpipe, into the breathing space and create the sound of snoring, and more so when they are more lax, they might even obstruct breathing. So by giving radio frequency energy to the obstructed part and or to the part which causes snoring or to the part which is lax, you are giving some sort of energy to those parts, which results in inflammation and then scar formation, fibrosis and scar formation, making those tissues taut, as well as at times sort of dilating those tissues or increasing the width of those tissues, wherein the airway becomes more patent and the tissues become taut, decreasing the snoring sound. So with this principle, we see the various procedures for radio frequency ablation. So that's the machine. This is the machine which we use, which is Sutter BM780. You use it in the cutting mode and the coagulating mode, cutting mode and the coagulating mode, and the bipolar coagulating mode. In radio frequency ablation procedures, mostly the bipolar coagulation mode is what is used for the procedures. For that, the concerned probe the electrode, that what is probe or the electrode, and the concerned wire needs to be attached to this particular socket, wherein it goes to the wire and then to the particular electrode, and that electrode goes into the mucosa or the tissue of the patient. These arrest, cutting modes, and coagulation modes, they have their own functions with precision, and we will not go into much of the discussion of that. This is the on-off switch, which needs to be switched on in any case. This is the ground electrode or the earthing plate kind of, which is usually put close to the operating surface. So usually we put it under the shoulder, since we function mainly in the head and neck area. And this is the other socket for cutting mode electrodes more than coagulation mode. But mainly we tend to use this and this for the bipolar coagulation mode. This is for all those or anybody who is interested in starting with radiofrequency or is interested in knowing bits and pieces more about radiofrequency ablation for obstructive sleep apnea or continuing with it. And that's the power output. The arrow needs to be put on the particular power which you want to use. Usually we use a power of somewhere between 3 and 4 for usual radiofrequency ablation procedures. It varies from patient to patient. It varies according to the structure of the tissue in which you are giving radiofrequency energy. It varies according to the water content of the tissues and various other principles of radiofrequency. But usually we tend to use between 3 and 4 for radiofrequency ablation procedures. Next, now this is, as we saw, the machine that's connected to a wire, whichever socket you choose to, and then that is connected to a probe. This probe, this is one of the examples of a probe. This probe is inserted into the palate. This is a palatal probe, and this is inserted into a palate, and energy is delivered to the palate to strengthen the palate or decrease the snoring sound in cases of palatal flutter or in cases of palatal obstruction for obstructive sleep apnea. Here I have not defined radiofrequency, not defined obstructive sleep apnea, taking into position that we are straight away studying radiofrequency ablative procedures for obstructive sleep apnea. But we all know obstructive sleep apnea in short means obstruction during sleep, wherein there are apneic or hypopneic episodes during sleep due to laxity of the upper airways. The usual points of laxity can be the palate, the posterior pharyngeal wall, the tongue base, the tonsils, the posterior pillars, or the parts inside the nose, wherein the turbinates and others. So here first we study probes. This is one probe, which is a palatal probe. There are similar probes like the tongue base probe, the nose probe, the turbinate probe, and there's a probe also for the tonsil. What varies in these probes is this angle, which is marked out here, angle. This angle, which is different and which suits that particular tissue, organ, or structure, and that is what varies in each of the probes. Now, important things about this probe is this is like a fork. One. Second, it is divided into two parts. This distal non-insulated part and this dark or black insulated part. So this distal non-insulated part is the part which we introduce inside the tissue, and it is introduced up to this black distal part. I mean, the distal part of this black dark portion. This dark blackened portion is the intermediate portion which helps as an insulator so that no radiofrequency current from this non-insulated part passes on to the instrument, or nor does it pass on to the tissue or the organ structures of the patient out here. So it is one of the safety mechanisms of radiofrequency. So this is one of the probes. There are similar probes like the tongue-based probe, which is nearly perpendicular, the turbinate probe, which is nearly horizontal, and the tonsil probe, which is also very similar. Next, we go to the procedure for nasal turbinates. First, it's an office procedure. Now, straight away, for anyone who wants to practice this, these are quite the protocols. Topical anesthesia is used, topical lidocaine or spray, injection of 2% xylocaine with adrenaline in both the turbinates after aspiration. Needle electrode is used. the one which I showed you, introduced into the anterior inferior end of the turbinate, and energy is delivered bilaterally. Here's a short notice about posterior turbinate. That was on the anterior turbinate. Now say we want to deal with the posterior turbinate. Ideally, the posterior part of the posterior turbinate should be treated first. Energy and power settings. Usually, as I told you, between 3 and 4, so that's 3.5 for 10 seconds in the Sata machine. In total, the energy that is delivered is 500 joules at 75 degrees. Here is a short video showing you radio frequency of the nasal turbinates. Here, what we are seeing here right now is the injection into a patient who is under local anesthesia. We packed the nose earlier and now injected the patient, and you're showing across the radio frequency probe into the anterior end of the inferior turbinate, giving radio frequency energy. It will result in blanching of the mucosa, as you see here. Blanching of the mucosa. You deliver this energy at 3 to 4 separate points on the turbinate. This is an example video. Point here practically is to deliver energy slowly and to remove the probe also slowly while giving energy, and there wouldn't be a drop of blood also. This is an example or a sample video set right in the beginning. But these are minor, straightforward procedures as such. So you see your radio frequency energy being delivered to the nasal turbinate. So now the next, soft palate. It's also done under topical anesthesia, local spray in patients with active gag reflex, injection of 2 ml, which is 2 centimeters above the base of the uvula. You inject local xylocaine, lignocaine with adrenaline, 0.5 ml bilaterally. An antibacterial rinse is also given. A palate probe or a needle electrode is introduced. Submucosally inside in the midline. Tip of the needle sits just above the base of the uvula. So this is the procedure protocol for patients for soft palate. The settings which we use are 3.5 for 10 seconds in Sata, 650 joules at 85 degrees centigrade, maximum power output of 10 watts. Precautions: needle should be very superficial. Blanching results if you use overpower or too deep. Needle needs to be repositioned if there's blanching. We don't want palatal perforation if the radio frequency ablation settings or the energy giving points are too close to each other. The inflammatory setting will coalesce and it can result in a palatal perforation. So needle needs to be repositioned if there is too much blanching. Mucosal injury can result, which will show in the form of slough and greater post-operative discomfort in the form of pain and difficulty in speech. So here's injury can occur on posterior or anterior aspect of the soft palate. Lesser energy is delivered to the lateral tissue as the lateral sides of the palate are thinner. Post-operative goggles are always prescribed. Analgesia is also prescribed post-operatively. Pain is one of the feature. Improves within 3 days time. Worsening pain signifies lot of mucosal injury. Here's a diagram, photographic representation of soft palate introduction of radio frequency energy. This is the palatal probe, and that's how it's sort of introduced into the palate, and radio frequency energy is given to this point. Next point we should select a little further so that there is no coalescing and any chance of palatal perforation. Points further away and laterally should be far lesser energy as the palate is thinner. Has also not cause any blanching out here. Give energy that much which is sufficient not to cause blanching. So these precautions need to be taken regarding soft palate. That's palatal points which we use. That's soft palate sites for electrode insertion. Now going to the tongue base. These procedures I've described in very brief, not in too much detail. Pre-treatment and antiseptic oral rinse, systemic pre- and post-treatment antibiotic analgesia, local anesthetic in the midline, on either side of the midline, and treatment directed within 1.5 centimeters of the midline to avoid the neurovascular bundle laterally, to avoid the lingual neurovascular bundle, and given over the posterior aspect of tongue, posterior to the circumvallate papillae. That's where you give radiofrequency energy. Minimum of 3 to 4 sites treated at each session. Give the energy at 3 to 4 sites posterior part of the tongue. 750 joules at 85 degrees centigrade. Maximum 10 watts power output. 3.5 for 10 seconds setting. Needle should not be very superficial. Subsequent mucosal injury can result. Sloughing can result. Potential for tongue abscess and airway obstruction. So these have to be borne in mind during tongue base. So at times we do not do it as a daycare procedure and admit the patient, and at times also do it under general anesthesia plus under a lot of antibiotic cover. So radio frequency tongue base, which are the points you give energy. Here, these are the points of insertion of needle electrodes. Behind the circumvallate papillae, that's the circumvallate papillae, that's the posterior part behind the circumvallate papillae, and little laterally, but not too lateral, avoid the lingual neurovascular bundle. So close to midline, but here, points of insertion of needle electrode. If you're doing in local anesthesia, sitting position, you can insert a 70-degree laryngoscope, rigid one, to the patient with the patient's tongue out, held with gauze piece or held tight, and insert the probe here behind at the posterior part of the tongue and give radio frequency energy at 3-4 different sites. Here, 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 here. 3-4 different sites. Here, here, here. So that's how you give radio frequency energy for tongue base. Here's a short clipping. We'll move it faster. Here first we are giving local anesthesia to the posterior part of a tongue with a curved bent needle to aid giving local anesthesia. So that's where we are giving local anesthetic. Yeah. So injecting it here. So that's first giving of local anesthesia to the tongue base. Yes. Now we are inserting the radio frequency probe and giving across radio. That's the radio frequency probe. Here you can see it's a 90-degree angle. This is the tongue base probe. There was a palate probe. There's a turbinate probe with different angles. So here we're giving radio frequency. That's how we insert the probe posteriorly, behind more, but in the center, close to the center to avoid the neurovascular bundle, and give radio frequency energy. Next, tonsil also similar under local anesthesia with a spray injection in both the fossa, the local xylocaine with adrenaline. Spray the throat also prior with 10% xylocaine. Both tonsils can be given radiofrequency energy by means of bipolar probes to achieve shrinkage. Post-operative analgesia and gargles. That's a short clipping of tonsil. Yeah. That's the probe which is used. That's tonsil is held with a Lux forceps or a tonsil holding forceps. That's suction, and there we are giving radio frequency energy. That's, you can see, one of the point of energy delivered, because it's a grayish slough present into the radio frequency. Tonsil is delivering energy. Yeah, that's one of the points wherein the energy was delivered with this probe inserted into the tonsil. Yeah, you can see it clearly here. So in short, radio frequency ablations, minor procedures were shown. With advantages are decreased pain, office-based procedures, low morbidity, high patient compliance. Disadvantage, multiple applications required. Sometimes with this one application, another one is required, another one also. Later, how to decide and when to give is all along presentation in itself. But in short, I'll just put it across, sharing some case series or studies wherein it shows anatomical structure, the soft palate study by certain groups, reduction in the AHI. AHI is the apnea-hypopnea index. This apparently, if reduced, shows improvement in the obstructive sleep apnea. This is depicted or deducted from a sleep study which is done prior to going in for any procedures like these in a patient of likely sleep apnea, obstructive. So the soft palate anatomical structure study is showing a reduction in 17% by doing radiofrequency ablation, tongue base by 43%, palate and tongue base together by 33%, and uvulopalato-pharyngoplasty and tongue base combined together shows a reduction in AHI by a significant 50%. So in short, the study results of radiofrequency ablation with or without combined with other procedures. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this. This is very nice cameras. Just a second.
Are you finished? Did you finish?
Yes, as of now, yes. This is just.
I think doctor has a question.
4 or 5 basic procedures, outpatient procedures of radiofrequency for obstructive sleep apnea. So, I mean, prior to this would be a full lecture on what is radiofrequency, what is obstructive sleep apnea, and what is the mechanism of action and how it helps for OSA patients. Then would come in this, and then the next series of more studies on radiofrequency use for OSA. Let it be.
Okay. I guess, doctor,
Sorry?
do you have a question?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, doctor, I have 2 short questions.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry we're getting late, but it's a very interesting presentation you made.
Yes.
I just have 2 short questions. Number 1, where do you work, doctor, if you don't mind telling us?
Sorry, I do not get it. For mine telecast?
No, where do you work?
Where do I work? Okay. Thank you. I live in South Mumbai currently, and I have worked there only in the past. And
where are you doing this radio frequency?
Sorry?
Where are you doing these radio frequency cases?
Yes, I will mention. I live in South Mumbai and I work currently in the past. I have done some of these radio frequency procedures at the Kambala Hill Hospital. If you know, it's a hospital in South Mumbai, private hospital sort of in South Mumbai. I've also done some of these procedures at Motibain Dalvi Hospital where I was attached in the past. And truly speaking, the first time I got exposed to these procedures was in the UK, where I lived there for a couple of years, from 2000 5/6 to 2008, and I did my first clinical attachment at Royal National ENT Hospital, Royal National Throat, Nose and Ear Hospital in London, UK.
Yeah.
There I was just posted in one of the units, and one had to carry on with that post for another 3 months. So that post, we never knew where we were posted, truly speaking. We just had to apply, and I was posted in an obstructive sleep apnea unit, which I got to know on the first day. And there I saw radio frequency procedure slowly, as a Ceylon radio frequency was used there in the daycare. They used it in the daycare. So that's where I picked up. But then we got the machine here and we worked here at these hospitals.
So I got the answer to my first question, and the second one is, in the olden days, I mean, in the last century, in the 90s, when we trained as ENT surgeons, we used to do a procedure called submucous diathermy for allergic rhinitis. And even we saw our professors, some of them, instead of doing tonsil by the traditional dissection method, they used to use a cautery to save time and just ring around the tonsil and take it out and suck out the gas and the debris and the slough. And the procedure was almost similar, except for the tongue base and the soft palate. I think for the tonsil and the inferior turbinate, I mean, what is the difference? I don't find any difference. I think it is almost the same procedure in the olden days.
So that way, if study is done and seen, the injury and the mucosal injury is far less with radio frequency. And higher
because submucous diathermy, you just use a needle and you use a bipolar cautery, and you have to also put it in multiple places, and the turbinate shrinks and there's a slough and then you suck it out. And similar for the tonsil. Of course, it's a good procedure for the soft palate and the base of tongue. I do agree with you. But for the tonsils and the turbinates, I don't think it's anything new. We used to do it in those days also.
Yes, sir. I'm open to any instrument being used for any of OSA procedures as such. But yes, definitely this has less of submucosal or mucosal damage. There is, hardly any slough or anything seen post usage in sort of tonsillectomy or tongue base. This, what we saw in the video, at that particular point, you see that minor slough or that white or grayish area that remains only for that particular time and for a very short time afterwards. As the healing process continues or as the radio frequency energy delivered to it, so the changes continue in the tissue, that is not seen usually much later on. But yes, radio frequency by tonsillectomy or radio frequency for tonsillectomy using the needle, yes, does give rise to a lot of slough post-operatively. But if we use the settings far too properly, there's a learning curve, and if we use the settings far too adequately over a period of time, then the slough formation is far less.
Yes, it is very informative. And one small thing I want to add, post-surgery, I would recommend hydrogen peroxide gargles. Instead of normal saline gargles, hydrogen peroxide gargles would be more apt, I think.
Yeah, to de-slough the...
to remove the slough.
Yes, to de-slough and de-slough it faster.
Instead of using normal saline gargles, if you recommend 20 by 20 volume hydrogen peroxide gargles, that would be more ideal.
Sir, I would, we continue with the normal procedures so that the radio frequency energy what is delivered has its effect on its own. The inflammation that takes place, let it take place, and the healing, fibrosis and slough formation takes place, let it take place. If we have used the settings properly, then then we let it be like that and use the usual standard protocols for the post-operative effect of radio frequency.